As the mother of one of the greatest athletes of our time, her story is remarkable. Her story lends us to believe that she's more than just the mother of Shaquille O'Neal. Faced with turmoil early in life, her circumstances shaped her perspective and strengthened her resolve to overcome challenges she will face later in life. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a rounding applause for Miss Lucille O'Neal. Wow, listen, I'm certainly glad that you're here today. I'm super excited. You probably can't see it in my face, but I'm elated. Got bubble guts and everything. That means I'm really, really excited.
Well, I'm glad.
Extremely excited. Now listen, this book,
yes.
Walk Like You Got Somewhere to Go. Tell us about it. How'd you get the title for the book?
Well, first let me say that I'm honored that you would ask me those questions, and I'm just honored to be here today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We appreciate you.
And I was telling the audience when I was sharing my story, the title came from a long time ago. I was brought up in a church, and I had the worst attitude that any young person could have.
You don't say, as a young person.
As a young person. And being tall, I never wanted to stand out in the crowd. I wanted to be left alone, and I just didn't want to be different. I was not comfortable with who I was. And we were going to church. We had a woman pastor, but she was a strong woman. And one day she called me. She said, Lucille, you come here and you walk like you have somewhere to go. And she meant it.
That's right.
And so I stood up tall and I stood up straight. And I came to her and she gave me an assignment. And I completed the assignment. But when I sat down to write my story, that one sentence came to mind. Walk like you have somewhere to go.
Now there were several times, I think, that you wanted to write a book. But I think in the beginning of the book you said, it was delayed, and then when you actually got to write the book, it was during the right time because you had what you needed to talk about in the book. Expound on that just a little bit.
I believe that when you go through many things and you're trying to share what you've gone through, you have to be able to have gone through and have gotten out.
Exactly.
Now, I don't even want to talk to anybody if you're going to try to tell me something if you have not been there and done that.
Right, of course.
So having gone through so many different things, I really had something to share. And my children encouraged me, okay, Mommy, it's time to write the story. And then my oldest son, being in the profession that he's in, the entire family gets a lot of attention. So I said, while I have your attention, let me share some things with you.
That was smart.
So, this is how it came about with writing a book at this time.
So there's a season for everything. It was just your season. What about mental welfare to mental health? Now, Shaquille, did he come up with the idea of mental welfare, or was that your idea?
Initially, when Shaquille and I sat down, you know, Shaquille he and I grew up together. Let me say that, because I was a young girl when he was born, so we grew up together. So I share a lot of the things with him that I'm thinking. He said, Mommy, why don't you call it this, from mental welfare to mental wealth? Wow. And so that's how we coined that phrase. But my mental welfare state of mind, I call it, is when I depended on everybody else for my own happiness, not knowing that I have everything inside of me to be happy.
Right. I think that's important. I think we as individuals need to tap into what we have inside of ourselves, as opposed to having another individual or material things make us happy, so to speak. So I agree with your statement. Dublin, Georgia. We're in the metropolis of Dublin, Georgia.
Dublin, Georgia.
Dublin, Georgia. You would have never thought.
I love it. See, no place like home.
That's right. Good things do come out of Dublin, Georgia.
Yes, they do.
So you were born in Dublin, Georgia. Then you moved to Newark, New Jersey. Tell me about that transition. I know you were born a country girl, but now then you moved, you became a city slicker.
I still got a lot of country.
Still got a lot of. That's okay. That's okay. That's okay.
But we moved when I was a little girl because my grandparents were looking for better things in life, like most people do. So we traveled north, and when they arrived in New Jersey, they went into business. And I learned the meaning of what being an entrepreneur means just by watching my grandfathers and my uncles. They pulled together, they bought property and businesses, and they took good care of us.
Now, your grandparents, they were fairly strict, as I recall. They had you in church almost every day of the week. But one thing that they didn't do, which I want to touch on, did they really show an outward appearance of love to you? They were really strict, but did they really show love, actually?
I think in the 1960s and the 1970s, they they had another way of showing love. If they clothed you, if they fed you,
and that's important,
then they loved you.
All right.
You may not ever hear it come out of their mouth, but that's the way they showed love in those days. But today, we need to let those words come out of our mouth and let what we say line up with how we treat our children and how we treat one another.
Right.
Love is an action word.
Of course, right. Now, you make some big comments about your grandfather. Now, back in the day, I just realized from reading the book that swagger, the word did exist back in the day in the 1950s, young audience, but you said your grandfather had some swagger.
My grandfather was a bad boy, and fine, ladies fine. He was.
Let me read something on page 39 in your book. And I did read the book, and I recommend the book to everyone who's out here. It says that your grandfather taught you strength and how to face any problem with focus and determination. Has that been your motto or your motif that you follow as you've transitioned from Newark to the person that you are now?
I learned from watching him. However, we don't always take into consideration what we've learned. Sometimes we do the opposite.
Right.
So what I learned what to do, but still did the opposite.
Right.
I knew what to do, but still did the opposite.
A lot of us still do that today.
And you read on the back that I was rebellious because I did the opposite, what Lucille wanted to do, knowing the right thing to do, but was just a child of disobedience.
Yeah.
Because, okay, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care what you say. That's not a good choice for anybody to make.
Right.
But I still watched him. He was a man of great character and great strength. So I knew. Just crazy.
Just crazy.
Just crazy.
Sometimes that's how it is. Sometimes that's how it is. Now, so you moved from Dublin, Georgia. That makes it sound more fancy if we say Dublin. Moved from Dublin, Georgia to New Jersey, and you're with your grandparents and your father.
Yes.
Tell me, how long from that point did you reconnect with your biological mother?
When we moved to New Jersey, my mother was always connected to us, but she didn't live with us. We lived in Newark, mother lived in Jersey City. So she was not physically present, but she was available.
Right. Okay. Now, this is the thing that I most remember from your encounter with your mother. You said, your grandfather had swagger. But back in the day, her mother was a diva. We use that term nowadays. Your mother was really a diva. And that was a perfume that your mother used back in the day, an Avon perfume that is still true and near to your heart today. Tell us about that.
You know, women love to have a certain scent.
We know about that. Yeah, they do.
And the scent may define the person that they are. And this scent was very, I want to say, soft, which my mother was soft and kind. The scent that she used really described her to a T. Now, I don't use Avon. To me, you know, they're a different product, but the reason I hold on to the scent is because of the memory that's associated with the scent.
Okay.
It's real soft. My mother was an angel, I believe, right here.
And it's a good memory. It's a pleasant memory.
It's a wonderful memory. And when I think about my mother, I'm getting better now, but I used to cry, you know.
Of course.
I love my mama.
That's the human side of us.
And I miss her so much. And I live today so happy with the things that she taught me, especially about being a woman.
Right.
And when I look in the mirror, like I tell everybody, I say now and didn't always, Lucille, you are a designer original.
That's right.
I know who I am because of what my mother taught me.
That's right.
We never know where the circumstances of our lives will lead us. Lord knows I didn't. My early years were spent in a stern but stable home with my father and his parents. But I ached to know the love of my mother. I didn't understand why she was missing from my life. By age 12, I was 6 feet tall and wondering how I fit into the world. Dodging nicknames like the Jolly Green Giant and Olive Oil, I used my fists to fight the intense feelings of isolation. In my 18th year, I became a mother without a husband. I felt estranged and friendless. Where would I get the strength to face the future? Again and again, Reverend Hartsfield's words rang through me. Lucille, walk like you have somewhere to go.
If you're just joining us, we're hanging out with Lucille O'Neal, the mother of Shaquille O'Neal. Miss O'Neal,
Yes.
now let's switch gears just a little bit. Now, when you were 12 years old, 12 years, you were 6 feet tall, at 12 years old. And something you said in your book, listen, and I know it's true today. You said, children can truly be so cruel to others. Some were particularly mean, calling me names like Jolly Green Giant and Olive Oil. Whenever I walked by, their laughter cut me to the core. I wanted to tell someone how much I was hurting and how bad I felt about being so different from everyone else around me, but no one was listening. Now, we see a lot of bullying in the school system on today. This wasn't physical bullying, but this was more so a mental or emotional bullying. How did you deal with that?
It was hard, very hard, because I didn't know how to deal with it. So when you don't know how to deal with something, that's when it reverts to the hurt that you hold on to inside.
Right.
And you can carry that hurt for many years, and it manifests, you know, in different ways. I started drinking to mask some of that hurt that I was feeling. And it's very hard to be different.
And there was something you mentioned in the book, too, that I think maybe you might have been in church and Pastor Iola called you down and you walked slumped down just to kind of mask how tall you were. Did you do that often? When did you really become comfortable with how tall you were or comfortable with you as a person?
It was a journey. When I had my children, all of my children, you try to live by example. So you have to do a lot of self-checking. And some people, it may take longer than others.
Right.
So it took me a while to be comfortable in the skin that I'm in.
Right.
And I was sharing with the audience that you're being set up for a leadership position and you don't even know it. When I began to stand tall, then I realized that I had a mission. You want people to look up to you? Okay, you got to stand up straight and tall.
Exactly.
What I needed to do was share this same fact with my children. So instead of preaching and not practicing, I had to preach and still be able to live.
Exactly.
So that my children would have a living example of what I was trying to instill in them, those values and that character. I have big children, tall children. They going through some of the same things or have gone through some of those same things. So I had to teach them how to deal with it, but first learn how to deal with it myself.
Right.